This presentation is about society and social power. So here's the story that I promised. Around the World in 80 Days. It's a famous novel by Jules Verne. It's about this wealthy English gentleman, Phileas Fogg, who travels around the world. He bets his entire fortune on this journey. He says he'll complete this trip around the world in 80 days and he meets with 100 adventures. There are times when it looks like the ship will drown, it will sink, there are storms and delays. And during the travel in India, they're traveling by train and the train suddenly stops and the driver says the track ends here. What about the newspaper report which said that the entire coast to coast is connected by train, and the driver says no, the report was premature, track ends here. And so Fogg has to get an elephant, cross the forest by elephant to where the track assumes. They continue the journey, and then while traveling in America, again the train suddenly stops and they see a huge herd of buffaloes, 10 or 12,000 of them slowly crossing the track. And the driver says there's nothing to do, just wait till the entire herd crosses, only then we can resume. So they just wait for 3 hours. There's one adventure after another. Ship timings change, there is no intermission. In the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, in the last leg of the journey, they are caught in storms and they run out of coal. So Phileas Fogg, he cuts the sails and he burns them. And then he cuts the cabins, the decks, whatever there is to be burnt in the ship is burnt. And finally they reach England. Only the engine and the hull of the ship are remaining. And the people in England are amazed because they didn't expect him to actually come back. This trip around the world itself was a miracle, let alone doing it in 80 days. This is fiction, but it very closely resembled reality at that time. Travel, whether by sea or by land, long distance travel was full of risk. It was slow, difficult, even dangerous. And when Columbus said he could reach the east by sailing west, nobody even accepted his idea. He found it difficult to find financial backing in Portugal, Genoa, Venice, England. And with great difficulty, he managed to get the King and Queen of Spain to back him. Ferdinand Magellan, who was supposed to be the first to have circumnavigated the globe, actually did not. It was only his ships and a part of his crew that survived the journey, that he died on the way in Philippines in a battle with the native people. And so travel was this difficult, even dangerous. And where are we all today now? Our travel, we can plan everything so perfectly. All the ticketing is networked in our countries. We have travel agents who take care of the entire journey. We don't even have to depend on anybody else. All we have to do is just get on the computer, on the internet. We select the destination, airline, the number of stops that we are okay with, the transit time that is manageable to us. We can even book a hotel in the destination, and we can even find out what the other people who have stayed in that hotel earlier think of the place. We can select the food on that we will be served in the plane. We can pay for all the expenses beforehand. We can even check ourselves in actually into the flight beforehand. So all of this has become so much easier today. Yes, there are computers, there is the internet, there is air travel, there is all the advanced technology today. But this change that we see is not just a result of technology. In every aspect of life, actually, we see that things are so much more powerful for us. In fact, in some ways, we are more powerful today than even kings were at an earlier time. Life expectancy is increasing. We all live longer today. It was life expectancy was 30 in medieval England, and then it inched up to 31 in the early 20th century. And today, the world average is 72. It's higher in some places. There is regional variation. 72 is the average. We all live much longer today. There is a lot less starvation and famine. 200 years ago, Marcus said that the population would outgrow the food supply, but today a UN study predicts that by 2030, we will have food in surplus of the needs. Unfortunately, starvation will not disappear, but that will only be because of mismanagement and not because of actual shortage of food. Education is more accessible to everybody today. It is no longer the domain of a select few. In 16th century, a wealthy German merchant, he consulted a friend of his, a learned man, a scholar. He said, I want to give my son a good business education. Where do you suggest I send him? And this friend said, see, if you want your son to get a good knowledge of addition, subtraction, any university in Germany or even France will do. But if you want your son to get an advanced business education and make him proficient in advanced subjects like multiplication, division, then you better send him to a university in Italy. And where are we all today? Multiplication tables are taught in primary schools all over the world. You don't even have to, you definitely don't have to go to another country to learn this. Primary education is compulsory in most countries. And today I can vote, but women 100, even if 50 years ago could not vote. Even some men could not vote. And I did not have to fight for these rights. I did not even have to ask for them. I just received this as a gift from outside, from society. Society has gifted all this to every one of us today. Few of us, we are all communicating now all over the world, and of course travel, which I mentioned with around the world in 80 days analogy. And we're all so much more powerful today, and all of this power came to us from outside. We received this as a gift. Why does society give this to every one of us? What is this relationship between the individual and society? We are all part of society. We cannot possibly exist separate from society, and our growth is defined, sanctioned, and supported by society. Any movement that you take that was led by one man or woman, any leader, it derives all of its energy, its power from the support of the people. Any march movement that we can look at in history, Martin Luther's views, they were accepted by people as they were ready for the Reformation. Within years, 200 new religions sprouted all over Europe. If we take even Charles Darwin's theory of the origin of species, there was opposition, no doubt, from many groups, but still, by and large, his theory was accepted. In fact, his book, it was a 490-page book, The Origin of Species. It got sold out, the first edition, in 2 days, and it went into a second edition, and second edition got sold out in the next 1 month. There were 6 editions in his lifetime, many translations. This acceptance was there because the scientific temper of the people of England had been awakened. So the readiness was there. The scientists at that time found it very difficult to reconcile their latest findings with the framework of science that existed then. So Darwin himself said, people seemed ready for this already. He remarked actually. And even in the freedom movements in India, Mahatma Gandhi is called the father of the nation, and he got independence for the country from India. He told the people, boycott all the British goods, give up your government jobs, all the jobs that with the British government, give them all up. And the millions of people obeyed, 300 million people, they listened to him and did what he said. Mahatma Gandhi actually got the power from the people because the people were willing, they were ready. He only voiced the aspiration of the people. Even a successful product like Steve Jobs, Apple product, the iPod, the iPad, all of this are successful because we are ready to buy it. We may not voice the need, but successful companies, successful individuals are able to anticipate what's just beneath the surface. They voice that aspiration. And when they act in tune with society, when they represent what the people want, they are elevated. And this power that they get from the collective. The group is willing. It's their support which gives them the power. So now what is the society? Everything outside of us we term society. It's what's on the outside. Society basically consists of people. Without us there is no society. We don't talk about any society 4 billion years ago. Universe, yes, but society, no. It's only when people come into the picture. And it is not just people alone that make up society. It is all of these structures, physical structures, the non-physical structures that bring people together, that make up society. Society does have a physical basis. The groups of people, the groupings have a physical basis, such as the biological type. The family is the first group with which we all identify. The family, the clan, the tribe, and then geography forms a basis for society as well. People of one village or town or region, country, continent. These people together, we can say, form a society. Society has a non-physical basis as well. It's not just people of, India or people of America or people of Europe who form a society. There are different attributes, psychological ones that bring people together. One is educational level or religion or political ideology, economic status, your the profession that you belong to, even a mental idea, all the people who believe in the abolition of nuclear weapons, all the people who are against testing animals for science. In this way, actually, even a mental idea can group people together. And then there are all of the structures. There are the physical structures, the buildings, the houses, the schools and colleges, the research institutions, the actual physical structure, the roads that connect people, the villages, towns, cities, the national boundaries, all of these which group people. The physical structures are there, the communication facilities, the transportation facilities. And then there are all of these non-physical structures also that bring people together, that give them a sense of identity, like religion, trade, the marketplace, and society is this very, very complex, but at the same time organized structure of independent, overlapping groups and subgroups. It's all of these people and structures all organized, and these are overlapping in that one can belong to any number of groups. There can be a Chinese communist, there can be an Indian Hindu software engineer, there can be a person from an indigenous tribe in Africa who has gone on to get their education and be migrated to Canada. Like this, one person can belong to so many subgroups and they are all overlapping and independent. And we can say that society is living. It's a living organization. One of Aristotle's famous lines is, "The whole is more than the sum of its parts." This we see in everything. Even in a food item, if you see a cake is more than the sum of some butter and sugar and flour. And when the horse carriage and the engine were put together, we got the motor car, or the integrated circuit chip, the screen and the keyboard together gave the computer. If we take a school, some scholars, a set of classrooms, a syllabus and a timetable, and this created the school which educates the entire population of the place. And perhaps one of the greatest illustrations of Aristotle's statement is society. Society is made up of people, but it definitely is much, much more than a sum of its parts. It's alive, it's conscious. Now, why do we say that society is a living organization? What do we call something that is alive? It has all of these, it meets all of these conditions and more. It senses, reacts, feels, thinks, remembers, learns, acquires habits and skills. It grows, it reproduces, and it evolves. It is said that within minutes after Britain's Princess Kate steps out of her car, clothes similar to what she is wearing get sold out from online shops. So it's as if people are just watching her, looking at her. The moment they see her, they immediately go. They want to follow, they want to conform to the style that she sets, and so immediately they're all sold out within minutes. So literally society seems to be watching, and this is not just in fashion. In the recent floods in Bosnia, Croatia, Serbia, it brought people together from the three countries and in fact from all over the world to mobilize aid, to rescue people. This we see during even times of other calamities, whether it's a tsunami in Asia, a typhoon in the Caribbean. The world comes together to act. When a girl in the tribal belt of Pakistan says, I'm going to study, the entire world comes to her support and even nominates her for the Nobel Prize. And so society is conscious, it's always watching. And we also copy each other, copy from each other. Within the society, we emulate each other. Different societies actually look at each other and they learn. The Indo-Arabic numerals that we use today, they originated in India and then they were improved upon in Arabia and then they reached Italy and from there spread to the rest of Europe and then to America. So this way societies keep learning from each other. Even the Green Revolution, hybrid seeds were tested and found successful in Mexico. They were used in India. When India faced famine, they found this successful and immediately said, let's use these seeds. And when India was able to bring about a green revolution, Pakistan and many Asian and African countries followed the same thing. So we're always looking at each other, learning and improving upon each other. A very recent example was the Arab Spring. One unfortunate incident involving a poor vegetable vendor in Tunisia. It affects 20 countries, starts off a revolution in 20 countries and impacts the rest of the world. So society is alive organized, just like a living organization. So what does society do? What is its function? It's intangible. I don't see it. I can't feel it. Is it like the air all around us? We don't see it, but when it is not there, immediately we know we can't survive without it. Same thing with society. First, it preserves, protects what has been created. It sustains us, and then it empowers each individual member for his, her survival, growth and accomplishment. Before any form societies, for example, if you take the primitive man, it was every man to himself. He went out in search of food, either he became food himself or if he was lucky he came back with food. But what does society do today? All of these structures that we have created, the family, it nurtures the young till they are 18 or 21. And takes care of all of their physical, social, emotional, financial, educational needs. The family is a microcosm of society. Whatever the family does to its members, traditionally the man supported the woman. Today both men and women, they draw support from each other and then the children, the young ones are taken care of. What the family does to its individual members at the micro level, it's the same thing that society does at a much larger level. It provides us with peace today. It's not very easy to get this impression reading the newspapers and watching the news, but actually historically the number of people killed in battle, it has dropped by over 1,000-fold. Statistically, it is shown that we are living in the most peaceful of times and we're close to eliminating food shortage. Healthcare has improved and multiplication is definitely no longer called advanced business education. We have more access to education today. It is more affordable to more people. Traditionally, it was either the men or the wealthy who could afford an education. Today, education is compulsory in almost all countries and there is great progress in science and technology which we all see, we all use. And the idea of human rights is established, there is far less discrimination today. People who are left-handed used to be forced to become right-handed. If anybody was slightly different, it was just not accepted. Today that idea is gone. There's less discrimination everywhere now, and it is said that more than half the school students now in the US will be in jobs that have not been created yet. So how much more exciting development we have to look forward to. There are deviations, yes, but today we at least have the power to criticize those in power. So in every way we are actually much better off than ever before. There is the family that takes care of the individual. There are governments, local organizations, NGOs that see to it that its citizens are taken care of. There is the press that keeps an eye on everything. We have educational and research institutions that take care of, that empower us with knowledge. Banks and commercial institutions, they serve us financially. There is the police, the army, the law enforcement agencies that take care of us, that serve us financially. There are organizations dedicated to all possible causes, whether it is the question of cutting down the Amazon forest, melting polar ice caps, the rising sea levels, even the rubbish that is dumped in space by our satellites. There's somebody who's taking care of everything, watching, reporting. And society has given us all of this power. I can give something only if I have it in the first place, if I can create it, or if I have obtained it from everybody. So, how does society get all this power? It has given us peace and food and education and healthcare and financial institutions that serve us, trade and commerce and transportation, communication. All of this we possess today. Life is a lot easier. We have all the gadgets that make our life easy, sometimes also complicated. But still, we have so much that serves us today. From where did all this power come? How did it all get created? Today, technology is such an integral part of every aspect of our life that it's very easy to attribute everything to advancement in science, but that itself is actually caused by this power that society has created. So, I'll again tell a very short story about how society gets its power. This is the story of a 16th century Indian emperor named Humayun. He was engaged in a military campaign when his wife was expecting the first child, the male heir who is to go on and rule the entire the country. It is so important to the king, and so he wanted news of this. As soon as the child was born, he wanted news, this king, the emperor Humayun. The problem was the palace and the capital. The palace was 100 miles from the battlefield. So the king was 100 miles away, and how do you get news as soon as the child is born? The best rider, the fastest horse would take 1 day in the hot sun over difficult terrain, and even a relay of horses and riders. It would reduce the time by one wise old minister. He said, I'll give you the news. In a few minutes you will get the news. Now this was 16th century, before the time of instant communication. And so, what actually this minister he did was, he erected tall towers at a distance 1 mile apart, all along the route between the palace and the battlefield. And on each of these towers, he positioned one man and gave each one with a drum, and a code was agreed upon earlier. As soon as the child was born, the man in the tower just outside the palace, he started the beating on his drum. This code was picked by the man in the next tower, and he passed on the message to the third man, and this way the message was actually carried all through the route by these drummers till it finally reached the battlefield in a few minutes. Now, what had been impossible earlier, carrying news over 100 miles in a few minutes, actually became possible. 100 men and 100 drums cannot do this. But when we are organized like this, each one a mile apart, positioned on this tower away from all the noise below, and this is able to actually do something which at that time society did not have. And a simple system made possible a feat that seemed impossible. Now this is how society gets all of its power. By harnessing the energies, the capacities of its individual members, of each one of us, and channelizing it through a system, like in this case, the towers, and equipping each one with a drum. This is like the magnifying lens. It channelizes the sun's rays and produces heat energy. It creates a fire. Or the dam and the sluice gates in the turbine. The flow of the river, when it is passed through this, it becomes hydroelectric energy. The same way society does with every one of us. Society is an organization of people. And so it's a huge reservoir of all our energies, our capacities, our knowledge, skills, our aspirations. And when all of these are channelized through a system, it creates very great power. One of the methods is coordination. Coordination we see in even simple things. When there's a heavy box which no one person can lift, when 4 people come together, they can lift it. So this way, what was not possible earlier becomes possible when different people come and put their energies together. And another organization that empowers us through coordination, another example is insurance. In 4 people working together, everybody contributes a little bit of the energy. In insurance, everybody takes some of the risk. So, if there are 100 ship owners in a place and each one has invested all of his or her earnings in that one ship. If that one ship is lost, that's it. That person is wiped out. He, his family, his dependents, all of their families, they are affected. But when the shipping industry comes up with this idea of insurance, everybody pays a small amount, maybe 100th of the value of the ship. Now that much is affordable. And when they do this, they all distribute the risk. And so even if for the one ship is lost, for a small sum, the entire society is offered the power to tide over a heavy personal loss. A small contribution from many sources amounting to a massive work is seen in Wikipedia. Many of us probably use it on a daily basis. It is the work of 30 million editors, out of whom 3 million have been active at different times. Each one contributes maybe one article, one section, one line, or at least one edit to a line. And this way now Wikipedia consists of 30 million articles in 287 languages. No one man or woman could have possibly done this. Just for a comparison, the print edition, the 2010 edition of Encyclopedia Britannica contained 40,000 articles. Now, this 30 million articles in 287 languages is possible only because of this power of coordination that there is in society. Everybody contributes a little, and this amounts to something so massive that empowers every one of us. Anything we want to know, we go there. And it is there. And even now, research proves that at least the English version, it is highly reliable, comparable even to Encyclopedia Britannica. Now again, because this involves so much technology, it's quite easy to say, oh, it's because of the wiki application, it's because of internet. But actually, even in the mid-19th century, there was this Professor Murray, James Murray, he led a literary project in which he said he welcomed volunteers to submit all the English words that they knew, along with the meaning, the first known usage, the origin, the different forms of that word. So he welcomed volunteers to submit all the words that they knew in the English language, and this went on for a period of 70 years. 6 million submissions were received, And finally, after editing, removing duplication, this became the first edition of the Oxford English Dictionary. So this is not something that, this power is not something that comes just out of technology. Coordination of people, of all the small inputs that from everybody goes on to give something so powerful to all of society. Coordination is one way in which society gives this power. Now we'll just watch a short movie clip. Just note all of these different ways in which the Roman army gets this power. Here I would like to bring attention to this second point that I mentioned here, specialization. Now the Romans have specialized divisions, the infantry, the archers, the cavalry, the signal bearers, and in the background they have these people who tend to be animals, the physicians, the blacksmiths, the people who carry the tent, pack all the things, and they even have one man who lights the oil in that trench, so all of the archers can ignite their arrows at the same time. So they have these specialized divisions, whereas on the other side, these Germans, they fought with a lot of energy. They showed very great courage, but sometimes just coordination, grouping alone does not do. This is where specialization comes. When there are different groups performing a different task that they are good at, that they are best at, this offers very great power to society. Like if all the farmers in the region, they all produce the same crop, everybody is going to be at subsistence level. It's only when different people have different crops that they all have enough to, they exchange and they all have enough of everything. If a school has, school or college has only maths teachers, only English language teachers, it's so dysfunctional. Earlier in the day we saw this, we heard about Apple, and we even saw the picture of Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. Steve Wozniak was the technical genius. He created the computers, and Jobs was the marketing genius. It required both for Apple to be so successful. The technical expertise of Wozniak, and then this flair that Jobs had to package, to market, to sell. It was the combination of the two that made Apple such a great success. And another thing that we saw in Gladiator was the hierarchy, the vertical division. It's not just different separate divisions of the archers and the cavalry. Starting from the emperor to the general down to the foot soldier, they have an hierarchy. One gives the command, the other follows it or passes it on to the others till it reaches the people right at the bottom. Now, many or maybe all presidents and prime ministers, they are criticized on their own countries, maybe even outside, but it is not possible to function without them. There has to be somebody at the top in any organization, school, college, business corporation, a CEO at the top, and then the vice presidents, the general managers, and so on till the fresh recruits. And when the people at the top, when they give the directions and those are followed, there is an hierarchy. Also, if every decision had to be taken by the people at the top, if every decision had to be taken by the president of the country, how dysfunctional, ineffective the governance would be. And so these hierarchies are also needed. Every profession has its hierarchy of expertise, from the service technician, then the production engineer, then the designer. When this is there, that also generates power. A society gets its power from that. And now, the final point that I have here, integration. Amartya Sen, who won the Nobel Prize for Economics, said, and this has been echoed by many other people as well, that countries with functioning democracies do not face famine. What's the connection between democratic form of government and the availability of food in the country? When there is a democratically elected government, the government is responsible, and usually they have to go back to the people again for their vote in the next elections. And democracies go with a free press, so the press is watching, reporting what the government is doing. The people are aware. The government knows that the people are aware, that the entire world is aware of what they are doing. When there is no transparency, it's easy to get away with almost anything. But when you know, everybody knows. And when the people can also go to the press and voice their opinion, when all of this is there, the integration of food production, supply, responsible governance, and the media, all of these, when they operate together, this integration also gives that country the power to eliminate famine. This takes care of it. So, through all of these different methods, coordinating a lot of people, through specialization, hierarchy, and integration, society gets this power. This was in the news recently, some 2 weeks back, that in Australia, in a railway station, a man was just going to board a train. Somehow he slipped and his leg got stuck between the platform and the train compartment. When he fell, because of that force, it got stuck. He was unable to pull it out, actually. And they didn't have at that moment the machinery to move the train or push it or anything. So they called the police there, and that policeman, he rounded up some 40 people who were in that area, and he said, let's all push the train to the other side. 40 people cannot push a train, but they can make it budge 1 inch, which was all that was needed to pull this man's leg out. This is the power that society has. What one person cannot do, it makes it happen through all of these methods. And we find this today. We find society has the physical power for defense, for external security. How many of us go to sleep every night wondering whether the neighboring country will attack our country tomorrow? It doesn't happen. We know the government is taking care, the army is there, and more than that, there is international law and diplomacy. And when we go to sleep, we know that power is greater, much, much greater than our front door, and the law is taking care of us. And transportation, like the comparison between what happened to the hero and around the world in 80 days, and how traveling for us shows that things are so much easier today. Even for cargo, the world's produce is available in our supermarkets all around the year. Oranges from California, or kiwi fruit from New Zealand, or the dates from the Persian Gulf. All of this is now available to us. All of this was not even available to the wealthiest or even to the royalty earlier. We all have today. And news, actually, it is said that in some villages in India, even years after the British left and India received independence, news had not reached them. They did not know that the country was free because news had just not come there. It had not reached there. Even a few decades earlier, we had to wait for the next day's newspaper to find out what happened in the world that day. And then after television, we could wait for the 8 o'clock news or the morning 9 o'clock news. And then it became 24 hours, and then now we have live streaming video, not just from the major, news agencies, but from even people on the street who have a smartphone. We get news and communication also. It is so much easier today. Today we are being seen and heard by people around the world, actually. And even education. Earlier in a place where there were uneducated people, like say in a village, if there was one person who was literate, who could read and write, who could read out the postal letters that came to the place, or who could write a letter, he had a lot of power. He wielded great power in that place. Everybody would come to him, and everybody was dependent on him. We all have that power today. We so used to it, we take it so much for granted. But the power that one literate person had is available with every one of us today. And the world has such great productive power. Even to grow more crops. We have hybrid, pest-resistant, drought-resistant crops and improved fertilizers, irrigation facilities and machines for agriculture. And 100 years ago, Ford customers were given the option of choosing any color of the car they wanted as long as it was black. This is how it was. And today, you don't have to be a shopaholic to know that we are all spoiled for choice. Sometimes, without doing some background research, if you go to the shop to buy a phone or a computer, something, it can be quite overwhelming. You need to do some research because there is so much available to all of us today. Even education, if you see, there are education loans that make education accessible, affordable to everybody, and banks and venture capital is available for anybody with an idea and with talent to go on and be an entrepreneur. Things that were available only to the wealthy, to the people right at the top, is now available to everybody. Books were so rare that they were hand written and they had to be chained to the libraries. And now we have, it's only that too with all the printing press, and then now with the electronic books, it is only time and energy that is lacking and definitely not reading material. Education, all of the knowledge that has been accumulated by people over centuries is now encapsulated and offered to all the youngsters in a period of 15 to 20 years. All of that knowledge is now available. We all have such great power today. As we've been discussing since morning, this power, it can be used for repression, it can be used for greater growth, and it is up to us to decide which direction we will go in. The progress is not uniform. In some places it is not fast. School enrollments for girls in sub-Saharan Africa is equal to how things were in the US 200 years ago. And girls in Afghanistan today are celebrating because they are allowed to ride a bicycle, something that was not available before. So this way there are regional variations, but the overall direction is progressive. And all of this power is now available to every one of us. You just take simple calculation. We do it, we're so well trained that most of us can do simple arithmetic in our minds. At the most, we need a pen and a paper, and we have calculators, and all of our devices now come with an Intel calculator. But earlier, imagine having to do it with Roman numerals. So in this way, we all have so much power today, and everything that has come to us from outside. If you look at every one of our activities from the morning when we get up, the phone, the alarm clock, the houses we live in, the furniture we use, the clothes, everything, the roads, the traffic rules that have been formulated, the cars and buses that we use, everything has come to us from outside as a gift, and it is up to us to take all of this power, to use all of this power which society offers us, and use it for our individual and as well as our collective progress. Thank you.
Yeah, very interesting. Now, just exactly on this, slides, how society get this power. Would you comment why there is also science through organized religion, through political ideology, through identity building, through the creation of national heroes, natural mythology, with the social construction of reality, and with the creation of artificial conflict, having chosen to have some enemy to put people united for a common goal, and or creating in the positive new compelling narratives, but for the role and responsibility of the citizenship, but usually in history more numbers than not, persecuted minority, with the sexual gender oppression and the repression, with the destruction of natural resources, with colonial wars, with the creation of monopolies, unequal distribution of resources, and by creating international law that allow one powerful nation to actually oppress less powerful nation. From this, I agree, but it's a pink picture in my opinion. Too nice. The world is not like this. The creation of power is exactly like this, but there is, and it's much more, rampant. A lot of other things where the result are disastrous. That's history.
That is where I think this important idea of values. Power is there, power is created through coordination, through specialization, but this can be used for the positive as well as for the negative side. Hitler, the Nazis were so well organized. This Roman army was organized, and any movement that is even destructive, only if it is well organized, it can go on for some time. So the power that society creates, it can be used in both ways. That's yes, and that is where values have an important function. Only in the presence of values can all of this be used for progress and
somewhere along the same line that we know from anthropology that there have been very successful societies in history, but there have been also failed societies. Society that at some point disappeared, not for enemies or other things like that, but because they weren't able to find a way to survive, in some sense. So there have been collapsing societies in which there could have been specialization, hierarchy, whatever, but they nevertheless failed. So something is missing. Second part, I think that, which is the positive role of conflict within this picture, in the sense that values are important, but we know that in real societies there are different hierarchies of values. There are different values accepted by different groups. Nevertheless, the fact that there are different values may be positive for society as a whole, in the sense that it opens up dialectics, an exchange, even struggle for power, whose result is positive for the benefit of society. So even if there is no hierarchy, there are many different hierarchies conflicting one another, that may be positive in the end. Okay.
I would like to build a bridge between Alberto and Roberto. I think that I think that we look at these four types of activities which produce the power in the dynamic terms. In the dialectic, that each of these four coordination has the opposite, lack of coordination, specialization versus generalization. These tendencies are moving. This is not the state forever, it's dynamic. It's moving from better coordination to the lack of coordination. Specialization, sometimes specialization is also moving too far. We have also problems with this. There is also always a type of tendency between generalization and specialization. And the general, so we will observe in business for last 2 decades type of getting cut, which produce more energy and more creativity, and integration and disintegration. So we observe this every day at the very different level. So if you look at these four elements, which how do you call these factors, which really produce the power of the society. In that type of dynamic way, we will understand, that there is a certain relations of certain dynamics within each of these four, but also we need to have certain relations between four of them to achieve the most power, the maximum energy from the individuals building the society. I think that if we look at the dynamic way, we can see that some of the societies collapsed because they were not able to avoid these integration tendencies. And some succeeded, or some collapsed because they were too specialized and they were so deeply rooted in this specialization, were not able to shift to the new specialization to respond to the challenges. And so I think that there are pretty good tools for, I will try in my presentation sometime, to come back to these four avenues which produce the power of the society to look at it as an economist. Okay. Good job.
Okay. Yes, but I agree. But you have to consider both sides.
Yeah.
So, and the dialectic, the dynamic, the tension between the two, so it's not only integration, but the interplay between integration and disintegration, or better, the degree of integration, at the same time, the level of hierarchy of society, etc. And then one can raise a few interesting questions about which is the picture characterizing, let's say, 1900th century society, which we can say high level of integration, high level of hierarchy, high level of coordination, as opposed to, say, end of 20th century society, which remarkably less higher level of coordination, so on and so forth. And the benefits and the pros and cons of the various proposals. But again, what about conflicts? I mean, I agree with your suggestion, it's perfect, but we know that we live in a situation, at least most of the situations in which we know there is no overarching set of values that are valid for everybody. And nevertheless, we find ways of surviving more or less successfully. Is that only, okay, we are not able to do more than that, or is there something more than that? This is the way in which we have to do things.
Toynbee had a whole theory of history that was based on challenge and response, which is to say that the role of conflict has a positive catalytic role. And I agree with all the three comments. I think they're all valid. My interest in Janani's presentation is from a fundamental level of what I was saying this morning about, is it possible to find some common principles across disciplines? In my presentation, I said, whether we're working in a political field or economic field or entertainment field or transport or in our personal lives, human beings are consciously, purposefully seeking to achieve certain goals. And I agree, I don't think this is a comprehensive list of the powers by which society generates power. But Janani's point, as I understood it, was that our capacity to accomplish goals is power, is social power. It may be the goal of dominating and enslaving other people or conquering other nations or producing more food or selling more goods or creating a beautiful ecological environment, whatever it is. And these are fundamental tools which it doesn't matter whether you're talking about a political system or an economic system or a family system. These are examples of, and not, as I agree with Alberto, this is looking at the organizational dimension. That was how she started. She said that society is an organization, is a living organization. So where does an organization get its power? So maybe if it had been clearer that this is trying to bring out one of the fundamental important sources by which society acquires power, and I thought it well addressed your point this morning, Roberto, that power is not a zero-sum game. And all of her illustrations show we tend to think of power in terms of who's dominating over somebody else. Her definition of power is much more generic. The capacity to accomplish and do what we want to do as a society. And I think this clearly illustrates that power is not a zero-sum game, that in fact we as a human race have been enormously multiplying our power to accomplish our goals. They may be positive or negative according to our values. And I just finished. And I think we need to come back to the point that Alberto raised, because if this is the organizational or part of the organizational aspect of power, we need to also look at other dimensions of it, the personal and psychological dimensions, which go way beyond what she said. Somebody else said.
I already took floor once, I hope I will speak after you.
Sure.
Okay. I wanted to make a comment on what you just said now, but actually you made me to my presentation. I don't know. My first, not necessarily a problem, but my first difficulty with the use of this concept society is that it refers to a too high a degree level of abstraction. I don't say that society doesn't exist, even if it is for the simple reason that when, for example, Merkel said that society does not exist, I was offended and I actually dedicated time on refuting that idea. So it's not that it doesn't exist, it's just that it's very difficult for me to work with this concept, even for the way that historically speaking it is very devised, and even at the general level, at the global level, I really like representation in the sense that it offers very optimistic views, and in a way it presents, at the beginning, it presents some achievements, achievements of society, and I think it's correct, but actually what is more dangerous and more interesting is that if we look now, we see that actually we're on a declining curve of those achievements. At the global level, the inequality has started to rise, the level of education has started to decrease, and it's actually, we're going in the other direction. And here my question or comment, going back to your presentation, would be why, if society has this power to organize for the achievement of positive goals, that put it like, why does it not do it?
Great
and then to go back to you said that awareness and knowledge about situation, I don't know, I heard that you're inferring some sort of positive causality in the sense that we will know about injustices and we will somehow coordinate to solve it. It's not true. It's actually the contrary of everything. I think now we know about everything. I think if we want, we can find out about all the disasters that are here, and this will not necessarily imply that something will happen in order for that to resolve. And that again brings me to the point that we always think that we got them from outside. The society passes us gifts that we got from outside. No, actually that outside, it's a very precise thing. It's history. It is historical development that makes room for contradiction, for dialectic. The dialectical movement is an historical movement. And creation of history is something that is, I don't know, I think it's a bit, it rather complicates discussion about society and simplifies it. But the question of coming from outside or as a gift of society for me is too vast. And then to go back a bit, I have a comment on your theory of specialization. I also think that specialization is a wonderful thing, but from a philosophical point of view, we have a problem. I mean, philosophers, some of us, wonder why now Hegel is no longer possible. I'm not a Hegelian. I'm not here to say that Hegel was the greatest philosopher of all time. This is beside the point. But he was a great philosopher with a certain worldview that now is no longer possible. We no longer have the possibility to create philosophical system like the one of Kant or Hegel. I'm not saying that we should, or this is the, but I'm just actually wondering how come it is impossible in a way for us to have this thing. And second, specialization doesn't necessarily mean good things. When you look at the, labor processes, the first, great Taylorist revolution that implied greater specialization at the workforce actually meant horrible things for workers, not in the sense that just pure exploiters, but in the sense of the decreasing of the level of knowledge that each individual possessed in order to perform a certain task. The tailor before him was able to construct a shirt, for example, starting from nothing, and now the worker is not only able to put the button because this is the only thing that he can do. So specialization is not in itself. We need to specify what we're talking about. And to go back at the discussion of specialization, now, really ironical, none of us possess, if you want, a worldview. This has been, if you want, limited to, self-organization, like bureaucratic organization in various countries, or all sorts of institutions that were no longer able to control or to verify in all way. So, I don't know, I just need some computation.
Thank you very much. Yes.
I think that what we are trying to do, we'll be doing it this way. We are looking for developing some type of meta language will help us to communicate across disciplines. And this is very general, of course, very abstract construct, for us to help us to get together. And when I mention tension, I mean conflict. The tension for me is the type of conflict. The issue is here. You can get maximum power from individuals when you keep certain balance. We didn't talk about balance, about all these different forces. And I think that this is the issue. This is, Janani presented static way. If you look, the dynamics of all this conflict moving one direction and another, there is always fight. There are individuals against coordination, and some are happy with taking responsibility. Somebody is saying, okay, I'm working like a piece of a big machine. And, again, you can go to specialization. You mentioned, there are some limits which really make people decolonize that, sure. But, the issue of balance and the efficiency, I think that's going to be moving forward, but I think that we should keep about balance. That is in the conflicts, and the balance between different tendencies within particular areas and among all of them. So this is how to keep it. And then, the some society, very prospective, they reach certain level of prosperity and collapse. Why? So the question I hope we will come to answer. We see some beautiful ancient civilization which disappeared. Okay. So anyway, the conflict, the language, tension, conflicts, whatever, competencies, whatever the use of Hungarian or other language, doesn't matter, we need to find the terms. We will understand each other, and then we can move forward. Thank you.
Carlos wants to speak.
Yes, thank you. So I feel very appealing the intention of identifying the mechanisms for which power comes from individuals to society. So it's very good to do this analysis, even if it is static and maybe optimistic in your position, but that's real advancement. So my comments are. First, I don't see among these mechanisms, and I understand it is intentional, I don't see competition in the mechanism. I don't know if it is because you think that competition in the end is only a mechanism which produces specialization. So, but that's, today with dominant trends in social sciences, somebody would say, what about competition? Second comment is about hierarchy, which obviously is a very strong element, and that may be the element which is changing more, or which could change more over time. Because the kind of hierarchy we saw in the movie 2,000 years ago is a very specific kind of hierarchy, which is completely different from the hierarchy you have today, for instance, in a modern family, meaning modern by non-patriarchal, So, or even in a modern organization, in a modern company, which typically, not all of them, and it depends on, there are several theories on that, and what works and what not, and there is still a lot of organizations using the same model of, let's say, an alpha male, which may be a woman, leads all the organization in a very authoritarian way. But there are other forms of taking decisions at the highest level, which is the point of hierarchy. And the third comment is that, in my view, something is missing in our conception between the individuals and the society. We were saying that society is too abstract. We are talking about organizations, but we aren't putting things between individuals and society. By the way, that was Thatcher who said that the society does not exist.
Let also back up in reaction to the third possibility of saying it.
Oh my God!
No, they back each other up. From the same family,
So I wasn't
the same society. They form the same society.
I wasn't a fan of Merkel, but okay, I thought that was, okay, so, and what I see missing is something which I call informally social forms. Social forms to use, if we, for instance, if we try to use kind of evolutionary dynamics to understand what happens with societies over time, and you make a very simple analogy with the evolution of life. The evolution of life has produced over time an extraordinary diversity of life forms, with certain points punctuate the equilibria at certain points where things suddenly change a lot, and you have this Cambrian explosion of suddenly many different forms of life. In society, we have social forms, not so many different, not so many variety of forms. When you look at that, maybe we have not been innovative enough building up forms, but I think we have, at the middle scale between individuals and what we call society, an ecosystem of social forms living, making out their living in conflict with the environment, trying to get resources from the environment, and also building up proposals, which insist on that. The understanding how proposals are built is, for me, a very critical thing, and how they relate to the structure of those social forms. I would say that the analysis of those social forms and the variety of them is very important for what we can do.
Anyone else?
If I may, very briefly, if I would add many variables, as I said, but if I would add one variable that sums up many, and that is intertwined with all that, I would put at the societal, at the family, which is an important aspect of any society, and individual level, the introjection of cultural construct. In other words, you cannot understand why an emperor would go to Canossa and why the Pope, that didn't have a big army, would be accepted by everybody as to be superior. If not anybody agreed, internalized that the Pope was God representative on earth, and so they had nitty-gritty to, bestow on him that honor, can like it or not, on the specific instance. And you would not understand at all the role of women if you wouldn't have understand the mechanism, cultural, social, individual, of internalizing to be having much less rights than men in the society in which it's true. And you would not understand why slaves that were much more numerous than the owners would not kill all the owners in many Spartacus revolt unless their chains would not just external but also internalized. And you wouldn't understand India if you don't understand how people accepting the incredible injustice and the disgrace of the caste system. It didn't actually at all depend only on the Brahmin caste. It's that the lower class bought, unconsciously on those constructs. You would understand how Pizarro got, a kingdom where he had a million of people. If those people didn't have a frame of reference that somebody on those strange animals were not humans that they could overcome in a second, but the demigods are coming to punish them because they had sinned.
Great discussion. This is exactly what we want. And I'd say, I think if Janani has put up 4 candidates. If we can get another 10, 20, 30 candidates that address different dimensions. When I was talking this morning, I was illustrating the role of the individual. And I think that's the personal side, the very personal side. And she was talking about the very impersonal side. And Alberto, you're going to be talking about social narratives, I think, aren't you?
No, tomorrow, power, empowerment, and disempowerment.
Okay.
So, about this.
Yeah, about this. And incidentally, Janani is going to be talking, I think, on the third day on challenges and opportunities, which really brings up the issue of competition and the role of conflict in it. So I think rather than look at this as a statement of the whole, she's putting this in as one piece, and if we can get all the pieces together, I think we'll have something very substantial. There's a question online?
Sasha, could we take into account solidarity as an individual energy converter to a social power? There are a lot of examples of this kind of social behavior. It seems that dimension of modern societies needs to be enlightened.
I agree. Solidarity is basic. It's the same as said about the principle of generosity. If I could there, I would probably say this is just throwing ideas, which I don't know if I'm wrong or not. But inside social forms or social forms to work, the main principle has to be solidarity, call it generosity, solidarity, or cooperation. If you look at a family, that's quite often to be the case, and that's even one of the things for instance, our simplistic vision of economics is fed by the fact that we think that the most important phenomenon in economics, even in market economics, is competition. But actually, competition doesn't happen inside companies.
Exactly.
Fortunately, because if not, they wouldn't survive. Companies, and sometimes they don't survive because of that. Inside companies, the dominant trend is cooperation, not competition. So,
and between companies and their suppliers and their distributors, it's the same principle.
And most of the economic output is done inside companies, so it's not the product of competition, it's a product of cooperation. Or like the example you put, a very good example of the visa system.
Incidentally, I mentioned that Jobs was thrown out of Apple, precisely because he tried to create competition within the company. He created the Lisa, and when they took him off of production, he went and designed the Macintosh as a competition. And when he was asked to release the Lisa, which was named after his own daughter in the marketplace, he said, number one rule in marketing is you never say this. He said, as he was demonstrating the Lisa, he said, by the way, in about 6 months, we're coming out with a new product, which is much better than this. And it bombed the whole, that's why they threw him out. Because he didn't know, he really believed the competition part of it.
Carlos wrote that the important point responding to the issue of solidarity. I'm very attached to the word solidarity for many reasons. But I think that solidarity also is a type of coordination. I would see that three types of coordination by market forces, because they are competition, by planning, central planning. And now we see more and more important coordination to the network. By the way, solidarity movement was a network. And the workers in the shipyard could go on strike to fight for the rights or privileges of hospital workers, because they couldn't, because the whole regional structure, the regional network was organized, we are solidary, we help each other, and then we use for specialization, who can, they should not go on strike because they are in the hospitals, the emergency fire department. But the other trade union solidarity members could go on the strike. It was a new concept of the type of network. So we see the different type of coordination, which is not neither market force nor planning. That type of flat organization. Okay, so we will be talking. The part of my lecture.
Yeah, you make a
but Janani made a good introduction.
You make a very interesting point. For me, it is still unclear if networks will, and in particular, all the phenomena connected to or happening in the internet, will create or not new types of social forms. Because it looks like that has the potential to create new forms. Because what we call social networks today is still, we still don't know exactly what it is. And the impact it has on society and how we define humanity, etc. But maybe that could be the underlying, the foundations for new social forms. That's just an hypothesis.
Great. Okay. Thanks to everyone.